This is actually my second time recording this video. It decided to not show up when I went to upload it, so love that. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be ranking the 9 Stephen King books that I have read, that I own. So let's just get into this because I'm tired and I don't have time for this. So number 9, my least favorite Stephen King book, has to be Doctor Sleep. This is the sequel to The Shining, and this picks up with the story of Danny Torrance, the little boy from The Shining, years in the future. And he is trying to rescue this little girl from a tribe called the True Knot, who basically feast off of other people's shining abilities. I don't remember a lot about this one. I need to reread it. I don't really want to reread it at the moment, but we'll see when I get back to this. Number 8, my second to least favorite Stephen King book, unfortunately, is Carrie. This is his first published work, and it's not bad by any means. It's actually quite good. But the first half was kind of boring to me. After the prom, it got good, but then it got boring again. I didn't really, I liked it, but then I read it for a second time not too long ago, and it's just moved down. Number 7, unfortunately, has to be Dreamcatcher. I really do like this book. However, one book tops this one just a little bit. This book is about 4 men who go on their annual hunting trip, in the woods of Maine, and one time that they are hunting this year, they end up running into a man who is mumbling about lights in the sky, and from there it just goes downhill. Aliens begin to invade the woods, and it's just great. I love this. There's a lot of fart jokes, which I don't love, but the rest of this is amazing, and I'm definitely gonna reread it one day. Number 6, I think, is The Dark Half. This book only tops Dreamcatcher because of the amount of gore that is in this book. I love gore. I love horror movies. I love gory movies. I love just anything in general that has to do with horror or gore. This book is about a man who basically kills off his pseudonym or pen name when he's writing, and he has this whole funeral burial thing, but his pseudonym ends up coming back to life as a humanoid entity and basically begins to murder people. This book was great. I loved this book. The gore was over the top. It's not too long, and I kind of liked the characters. The villain in this book is genuinely terrifying. I love the movie and everything. This is definitely one of my favorites. This is where it gets real. So I just finished reading a Stephen King book, and that Stephen King book was Cujo. This is number 5 in my favorites list. This book was a good mix of gore, horror, and realism. This book is about a Saint Bernard who ends up chasing a rabbit into a hole that bats infest, and he ends up getting rabies. This whole book goes through his mental state as it goes from really good dog to very, very bad, horrific, bloodthirsty dog. And about halfway-ish through this book, Cujo ends up trapping Donna and Tad, 2 of our main characters, in a car. From there, it gets a little boring, but it picks right back up after. It's somewhat repetitive with the whole car thing. However, this was really good. The kills, the one that stands out in my mind the most, the one that completely overshadows every other death in this book. I barely remember the other ones, but this death stands out in my mind, where there's this man who gets attacked by Cujo and ends up getting his shoulder bitten, and when Cujo pulls back, all these tendons and blood just burst, and I love it. So yeah, number 5, love this book. The ending, however, was very predictable. I saw it coming from the first few pages of the book, that I wasn't a fan of, but the rest of this book was great. Number 4 spot has to go to the first ever Stephen King book that I read, Pet Cemetery. This is an original cover. Pet Cemetery follows a family who moves into a new house in Maine, and they end up moving into this house with a pet cemetery in the backyard. And but far behind the pet cemetery, there is an ancient burial ground where people used to bury other things. However, the burial ground is much different than the pet cemetery because the burial ground will bring things back to life, but they will change them. As the story progresses, this family goes through many tragedies and ends up burying two members of this whole thing in the burial grounds, only to regret it later on. This book was terrifying. It captured grief perfectly. I know what grief feels like, as I have lost, I think, three family members that I can remember. Those being two of my grandfathers and my aunt. And this book captures grief perfectly. It is a pitch perfect representation of grief. It goes from the anger to the depression to the regret to everything in between. This book was just great. Spoilers for this. There's a scene in here that was very sad, and that is when Gage, the Creed family's young son, gets killed by getting hit by a truck. That was so sad. And then seeing the family's psychological decomposition, it's really good. I love this book. It's horrific in the right parts. Um there's really nice kills in this book, even though only a few people die. Um, I wouldn't call it fast paced. It's a short book, but I'd say that it's quite slower paced. It's more focused on building the characters and getting you emotionally attached, so that it's more of an emotional impact when they die. And I love that about this book. What are we on? Number 3? Number 3, hands down, has to go to Salem's Lot. This book is about a author named Ben Mears, who, after a long absence from this town, Jerusalem's Lot, decides to go back to write a book on the legendary Marston House. When he gets back to town, however, and is about to begin writing his book, the Marston House gets sold to a group of 2 people, Kurt Barlow and I forgot his first name, but something Striker, something like that. And as he begins to write this book, people end up going missing. This is your classic. This is your classic vampire tale set in America. However, this is something that isn't like Twilight. This is straight up bloodthirsty, horrific vampires. I loved this book. I knew that it was from vampires because of spoilers. However, if you don't get any spoilers and you don't know that this is about vampires, you will be wondering what's going on, because I was. There was a period of time when I was reading this about halfway through that I completely forgot that this book was about vampires because I was just so focused on the characters and everything. And then all this strange stuff starts going on, and I was just like, wait, what am I reading? Like, what is this, like, creature? And then I remembered, oh, wait, it's like vampires. So at first, it's not clear that it's vampires, but then once people start, like, dying, it's quite clear that they're vampires. There's a few very terrifying scenes. I will name 2 right now, so spoilers for this as well. The first scene that stands out vividly in my mind that terrified me was the scene where there's this grave digger who is burying a grave, or like burying a casket with a child in it. And he begins to feel somebody watching him, and he like sees the house over the trees. And so he unburies the casket and he opens it, and the child's eyes are just like open, like wide, and that's where that scene ends, and that was terrifying. The second terrifying scene had me scared to sleep with my window open, which is not good during summer, because there was another scene of a child who had died as well, who was at this man's window, tapping at the window, begging to be let in, and that was terrifying as well. I could not sleep with my window open after that. So this book is really good. Third favorite. My second favorite Stephen King book is The Shining by Stephen King. I don't know why I said that. This whole video is about Stephen King, clearly. This is the first book in the duology of Doctor Sleep and The Shining, and this book is so much better than Doctor Sleep. This book follows a family of three, Jack, Wendy, and Danny Torrance, who go to the Overlook Hotel as winter caretakers. While there, Danny can see these ghosts with this power called the Shining, which allows him to see dead people and spirits and mentally contact other people with the Shining. And as well as that, there is Jack Torrance, the father and husband of the family, who begins to go down a decomposing mental state. And he goes from completely sane to completely insane throughout the story, and ends up trying to murder his family. The ending was amazing. Loved it. Loved the characters. Seeing Jack's mental state just go down farther as the story progresses I just loved it. There's so much. It's more of like a psychological horror, which I actually quite enjoyed. I haven't really read a lot of psychological horror, so it was actually quite nice to read something different for a change. I've read this book twice and loved it each time. Definitely gonna reread it again in the future. And no surprise here, my favorite Stephen King book that I've read so far is It. This is a massive book. This book is about 7 children who end up having to battle this humanoid entity who can take on the appearance of your fears. It feasts on your fear and then it kills you, basically. They agree to come back 27 years later to fulfill a promise that if it ever came back, they would come back as well to defeat it once and for all. This book was heartbreaking, terrifying, horrific, gory, bloody, everything that I wanted from a horror novel. I had seen all 3 movie adaptations prior to reading this book, which wish I read the book first, but it's fine. This took me a long time to read, but it was so worth it. This is my favorite horror novel of all time. This is my favorite horror movie of all time. And this is my favorite horror character of all time. I definitely want to reread this soon. Probably around like October-ish. But definitely 5 out of 5 would recommend. I'm going to throw in a little added bonus to this video. So if you watched this far, thank you. I'm now going to go into the next few Stephen King books that I would like to read. So last night, after I finished Cujo, I decided to pick up Different Seasons. This is a book of 4 novellas. I'm about 20 pages in. I'm reading the first story, Rita Hayworth and Shawshank Redemption, and I'm loving it. So I'm going to give you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm going to give you 6 of the books that I would like to read from King soon. So this first one I'm probably going to read in summer. That is The Stand by Stephen King. I got this for Christmas. It's another massive book. This one is longer than it. I believe it's 1,100 and something pages. Let me check. It is 1,153 pages. And so it's about the same size as my copy of it, actually. This is the complete and uncut edition, and I've heard that this book is really good. All that I know is that it's about a scientifically generated virus that ends up breaking loose and killing 99% of the population. We follow 2 groups, the good and the bad, and they are the only 2 groups left in this post-apocalyptic world. I've heard that it's really good. It's one of his most popular, if not his most popular, work of art, and they just made another adaptation of it, and I need to read this. I'm going to read this during summer when I have all this time to put into it, especially since all of my Xbox friends blocked me. Some tea was spilled, but that's not for this video. I don't think I'll ever explore that, but just to peep at my inside life. But now I have a lot of time on my hands. The next book that I would like to read soon is a fairly short one. That's The Dead Zone. This book had some references in Cujo. The first 1.5 pages of Cujo was actually describing a villain in this novel. And so that just caught me intrigued to read it even more. The font isn't that small, so I think I'll pick this up soon. This is about a man named John Smith who ends up falling and hitting his head and then wakes up with psychic powers, I believe. It sounds really interesting, and I've heard a lot of good things about this one, so I have high expectations. I've noticed that I like New King more than I like Old King. Like, all of King's older works were in the top, like, 3, top 5-ish. Next, I would like to read Christine soon. I saw the movie to this not too long ago, and I loved it. One of my favorite King movies of all time. This is my stepdad's favorite Stephen King book, favorite Stephen King movie. Personally, I know not a lot about it. I know that there's a teenager who ends up purchasing this car that is haunted, and the car begins to go on a killing spree, as well as making the teenager Arnie start going down a psychological staircase. Sounds really good, actually. The next Stephen King book that I want to read soon, this is probably going to be the next one that I pick up. It's going to be Misery by Stephen King. Clearly. This book is about a novelist named Paul Sheldon who ends up driving his car off a cliff during a bad snowstorm, and his number one fan, Annie Wilkes, comes to rescue him. She then holds him captive in her house for months, I believe, because she just read the newest book in the Misery series, which is what is it? It's a fictional novel series inside of this book. Like, it's not real. It's like fake, but it's in this book. Why was that so hard to think of? I have no clue. But anyways, she does not like how it ends with him killing off the main character, Misery Chastain. So she holds him captive for months on end until he writes the perfect novel for her while torturing him. I saw this movie not so long ago as well, I think in December of 2020. I was at my aunt's house, we watched it and ate ice cream, which was not a great idea at the same time. There's a scene in the movie that stands out in my mind when I think Misery, and that is when she breaks his ankle with the sledgehammer. I've heard that it's quite different in the book. There's an axe here, so I have a feeling that he should like chop something off him or whatever. Really looking forward to this one. I think it might be the next book that I pick up. Next is actually going to be one that I've tried to read on multiple occasions. That's going to be Needful Things. This is my mother's favorite Stephen King book. This book is about a man who comes into town named Leland Gaunt, who opens up the shop Needful Things in Castle Rock, Maine. You can find anything you want in this shop. You can buy anything you want, but instead of real money, you have to do him a favor. So basically, this book follows the town of Castle Rock, Maine, as it goes to all chaos. It just all goes to chaos. Everything just starts going haywire for everybody to get what they want from this shop, and it sounds really good. This is my mom's favorite Stephen King, as I've said, and I would like to know what all the hype is about. It's actually quite long as well, so I might save this for a little bit later on, but I will definitely be getting to this soon. The next book that I want to read is Rose Madder. I've heard that this book isn't too good. However, I would like to read this. It's about a woman named Rosie who one day decides to run away from her extremely abusive husband. And she finds this painting, and all I know is that she goes into this painting. That's all that I know of as of now. I would like to read this because it's just interesting to me, not the whole like abuse part, but like her running away from it is what seems interesting to me. It seems like a longer version of the adult Beverly storyline in It, where she's running from her abusive husband and her husband is like following her, yada yada yada. It just sounds like a longer version. It's quite short, but it sounds really good. The final Stephen King book that I would like to read as of now, The Green Mile. I've started this book before, got about 50 pages in, and then stopped reading it for whatever reason. This is about a man named John Coffey, who is guilty of raping and murdering two young girls, and he ends up going to this prison. I forgot what it's called, Cold Mountain Penitentiary. And basically, he's on death row. It follows him and a police officer. That's all that I know. I know that the ending of this is sad, and I feel like the end they kill him, but you know. Yeah, this book sounds really good. So, yeah, that's that. Um, thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one.